What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right, this morning I'm going to talk about our favorite subject in boxing, the one that everybody can agree upon being a problem, but the one that everybody wants to point to other people about and blame them and not look at themselves. And by I mean people, I mean the different people within the boxing world who are involved in boxing matches, other than the boxers and the fans. I'm talking about the promoters, the referees, the promoters, the referees, the judges, sanctioning bodies, and the media. There was an article because there's some really great bouts that happened this weekend. I enjoyed them all. And two of them, however, there was some controversy around. People that I have a lot of respect for and I speak to on a regular basis about boxing. We disagreed about the outcome of the Clarissa Shields bout. There was also some controversy about the officiating or the scoring for the bout for Joseph Parker. No, excuse me, not Joseph Parker, but Josh Taylor versus Victor Postal. There were some wide scorecards and a bout that really was pretty, I think was pretty close. So as usual, there are a lot of talks about robberies and how judges are, were in the pocket of the promoter and how these people are getting taken advantage of, all of that type of stuff. Now, there was an article that was written in Boxing Scene, and I won't go through that particular article. I love to go through these articles because I don't want to paraphrase what people say. I want to actually use, I don't want to be accused of taking something out of context. So I literally will go through the whole article, and if you have the patience to bear with me on it, I appreciate it. If you don't have the patience or the time to bear with me on it, hey, there'll be a summary in on somebody else's page. So that's about the best I can do. But I don't want to take what they say out of context. So, but this one I'm not going to go through. I'm actually going to go through an article that came out about 18 years ago by a boxing writer, and when he was speaking of the controversy around Evander Holyfield versus Lennox Lewis and the judging that went on in their first bout, which resulted in a draw. And the summary of it is that I find it really ironic that similar to the article that came out in Boxing Scene, which was entitled "There's Something Evil in Boxing and It Stinks," where this the author Tris Dixon goes through and talks about how the scoring for Josh Taylor versus Postal was too wide, even though people could say that Josh Taylor fought a good fight and should have won the fight, but talks about this, the evil in boxing, which is, clearly referring to the judging of these matches. And then also Parker's promoter, Joseph Parker's promoter also said that's the other thing that had come out. Joseph Parker was complaining about the officiating in the UK in the last two bouts that Joseph Parker took part in. That being the Joseph Parker Huey Fury bout, and also the Anthony Joshua Joseph Parker bout. The Joseph Parker bout, everybody understands what that was about. No, not letting any inside boxing happen. Anthony Joshua being able to call his own timeout. The wide scorecards in that bout, which was a much closer bout. I don't think that there was really any round that one particular person or the other won. But it's really easy to look at the promoters, to look at the officials and the judges, but not look back and say, well, the same logic that people use to call corruption in boxing is for the judges and the referees applies to the media as well. Now, there's an article that had come out, like I said, it was years ago, and it was in the New York Post, and it was written by a guy named Wallace Matthews. Wallace Matthews um, went eventually. I think he covered boxing for a while for the New York for ESPN, but he really is a baseball guy. And by his own admission, he's one of these boxing journalists that went into journalism because he knows how to write well. And he's an excellent writer. And he wanted to cover sports, and he got a job where he wanted to cover sports, anything but boxing. In his own word, in an interview that I saw him do earlier, I think it was in 2017, so sometime last year, maybe around April of last year, he said that the reason that he got into boxing, I mean, well, that he got into sports as a part-time job, calling high school games, high school football games, right? In the early 80s, got like $8, $9 an hour to do that. But he got hired on as a full-time writer because Larry Holmes answered his phone call. And he got a piece of information out of Larry Holmes, which was that he had planned on fighting Michael Spinks for his 49th bout. And that is when the editor decided, well, I'll hire you on and give you a full-time job. So pretty much the only reason he covered boxing is because it's the only way he get a job. And get a full-time job. And he continued most of his career covering the New York Yankees. So he's basically a baseball fan that dabbles in boxing, not what you would call a lifetime hardcore boxing fan, which I think is something that you see in the boxing media in general. But he, in this article, describes, and the article is entitled, "Promoters Always Get What They Pay For. Judges Won't Bite the Hand That Feeds Them." And in this article, he talks about his experience as being a boxing writer, and how he 16 years ago had went to a boxing match overseas, and I guess he had gotten hired to do color commentary or something like that by the promoter. And so let me go into it, but I find the interesting thing about this is that he doesn't relate that, or doesn't communicate the fact that he's one of the people that were getting paid by the promoter. And it's the media guy, that got an interview with Larry Holmes, but it's his access to Larry Holmes, or that is access to the fighters, that allow him to earn a living as well. So let me go through what he said. 16 years ago this very week, which honestly is like, at this point in time, is like 1983. I had a rare opportunity to see how professional boxing works, truly from an insider's perspective. It was also, now I realize, a glimpse into how a fiasco like Louis Holyfield draw can happen. I was working for another newspaper at the time and was hired to do television commentary by a major boxing promoter for a title fight he was promoting overseas. The promoter, like everyone else in the story, will remain nameless because who the people are less important than what they do. Anyway, this bout was about to take place in a casino in Evian, France, a town on the France-Switzerland border. The promoter not only paid my fee, but my travel expenses, my lodging in France, a beautiful chateau-type hotel with a panoramic view of the Swiss Alps, and all my meals. He was doing the same for the man who would referee the bout, as well as the 3 judges, all of whom were coming over from the U.S. For 4 days leading up to the bout, we all enjoyed what was essentially a free vacation. All day long, we shot snooker in a glass-enclosed billiard room overlooking Lake Geneva. At night, we dined at the promoter's table on the promoter's tab. By fight day, we were all great friends. We also knew quite well that the defending champion was the promoter's boxer. To this day, I'm glad the champion won by knockout, because it turned out to be a close bout, and I would not have liked to see how my new buddies, the judges, had scored it. But I think I already knew. The point is, those who expect to find canceled checks made out from Don King to Eugenia Williams or Larry O'Conley, the judges who made sure Holyfield held on to his title the other night, or big deposits in their bank accounts, or bags of cash stuffed under their beds in their hotels, can stop looking right now. The payoffs can be found a lot easier than that. All you have to do is look at the records of both of them and understand the way business is done in boxing to figure out what happened Saturday night at the Garden. This is not so much an indictment of Gene Williams and Larry O'Connor as of a system that allows promoters and sanctioning organizations to buy judges' decisions and protection without actually handing over any cash. In real life, Eugenia Williams is a 48-year-old municipal accountant for the city of Atlantic City, New Jersey, who probably earns $40,000 a year, 50,000 tops. And yet, her alter ego, Gene Williams, the boxing judge, has been to Italy, Germany, France, England, and South Africa twice, on the nickel of one promoter or another. Larry O'Connell, classified as a Class A star referee by the British Boxing Board of Control, has made 12 trips across the Atlantic to judge bouts in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, Lake Tahoe, and now New York. And until things went so horribly awry Saturday night, Williams and O'Connell were probably looking forward to yesterday morning, when each could brag to their co-workers of how they had been judges in the so-called fight of the decade. Instead, both are in the eye of the hurricane. There is no way Williams could have legitimately scored Holyfield the winner of the bout, as she did. And yet, there is no one who will ever prove that she was bought by Don King or IBF president Bob Lee or some mobster who plunged big money on the draw. And while there is less to quibble about with O'Connelly's card, which came up even, it is certainly strange that no one in Holyfield's camp raised an objection about him before the fight, even though he was both an Englishman and the man who scored Corte promoted, like Lewis, by main events ahead of Oscar De La Hoya. Holyfield camp seemed oddly satisfied with O'Connell despite those two strikes against him. You see, O'Connell is a WBC judge. And even though Lewis wears the WBC belt, the WBC is run by Jose Sulaiman. Jose Sulaiman is run by Don King. And even the casual boxing fan knows Holyfield is Don King's fighter. Need I say much more? All you need to do is understand is what Gene Williams and Larry O'Connor understand as well as any boxing judge. Like all good employees, they just aim to please the boss. If you want to keep doing big fights, if you enjoy taking the occasional trip to Paris or London or Rome or Johannesburg or New York, all you have to do is the right thing for the man paying your freight. So if there's a close round, it's Holyfield. If it's not such a close round like the fifth, when Lewis nearly knocked Holyfield's head into Celebrities Row, it's still Holyfield, at least on Williams' card. So you get the point of this article. But I find that to be all fine and good. And moving it back into the current time frame to right now, I find it ironic that this guy, like the author of the "There's Something Evil in Boxing" article, and it stinks. There's something evil in boxing and it stinks article that they leave out the media. Because last I checked, this man who wrote this article back in 1999, talking about how the judges, he had an insider's view on how judges and referees are corrupted because their tabs are covered by the promoter. Only knew that information because that same promoter paid his bill. Same thing. The same guy who got his job because he made a call to Vegas and got Larry Holmes on the phone. Now, I doubt very much that he probably got Larry Holmes' publicist, or maybe he got a call from Don King, got a call to Don King at the time. And that's how he got his access. But it was his access to the fighter, which promoters give to the media, that allowed him to make his living, and a much more direct living, right, than what he's accusing the judges and the referees of. Now, I don't have any issue with people complaining about referees and judges. I don't have an issue with it. Typically, I don't do it because it doesn't really matter to me if a guy's card, like the width on a scorecard. I care really about whether the outcome of the bout was correct. And most times it is. Sometimes I disagree heavily. But I typically try to stay away. I try to stay away from that. But I don't deny at all that that's the case. Clearly, if a referee is getting picked and offered up, and the reason that they're getting the job at all is because the promoter suggested them, and the two camps come together and agree on them, but one promoter is having them eat dinner with them, buying them dinners, buying their hotels, taking them on, like you said, a vacation, right? They get their names in the paper. They get a front row seat to the bout, right? It's a very, very good side hustle. They're earning nice, and they get paid to do it on top of that. Of course, yeah, they're going to want to do that again. They're going to want to have access to that. And only in the case where there's a tremendous backlash, will they get put in an awkward situation where they say, okay, well, oh man, there's a huge backlash on me. Regardless, the same thing applies for the media. The same thing when Bob Arum said that the reason that he wanted Vasyl Lomachenko versus Jorge Linares to be on that particular date in May was because that was the weekend of the Boxing Writers Association of America Awards. When you have Dougie Fisher and Steve Kim, who literally work for a promoter. Oscar De La Hoya owns Ring Magazine. Owns it. And they work for him. And they cover his boxers. And they cover the boxers in the events that he participates in. They have Gennady Golovkin as the number one pound for pound guy. Gennady Golovkin will now have been on 2 consecutive Golden Boy Promotions cards. Well, excuse me, 2 out of 3. Yeah, 2 consecutive. It'll be Canelo Alvarez last year, Canelo Alvarez this year. In May, Canelo of 2017, or excuse me, August in 2017, September 2017, September 2018, which is 95% of, which is probably estimated as 75% of their revenue for the year. Just comes from that one bout. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, man. I say that to Trace Dixon as well. All of these guys are on the payroll. All of these guys, most of these guys are getting perks. If they're interviewing fighters, same thing goes for people that are getting YouTube websites. How are they getting there? How do they get access to the fighters? There, of course, and I'll say this name, 78 Sports TV said that Bob Arum and Top Rank wouldn't give him security clearance unless he proved that he was going to write articles that were complimentary of Bob Arum. So it's not even it's not even just a situation where Bob Arum was where they're giving a media guy perks. They're denying media people entry and denying them access. And if all 78 Sports TV had for his revenue was access to those fighters, then he would be hard pressed not to play that game. And I personally have had conversations with boxing media people before I got involved with this channel. And when I was in the comment section for years and years of people writing articles, and I would send them notes, especially if it was a new journalist. And they would say, look, man, it's just a job, man. I work for the promoter. The promoter asked me to say this. So That's why I think, and see, if you even listen to the way that you have just on these videos that we do about Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, how just canned, how incredibly canned the arguments are that come to the page. Just sign the fight. Why didn't he answer for this? It's the same thing, man. And it could be a YouTube channel that has, let's say, access to fighters. Or Eddie Hearn allows them to put their name, subscribe to this channel. Look, man, nobody in this is beyond reproach. If you're getting paid by a promoter, if you rely upon a promoter for you to put out your material, if you believe that it's reasonable, if it's reasonable that a promoter can punish you or deny you a benefit, if you say something that they don't like, then, and you react to that, or whether it's a promoter, whether it is a judge, whether it's a sanctioning body, because the sanctioning bodies get paid by the promoters as well. They get paid off sanctioning fees. It's the WBO. Come on, man. You don't think it's obvious there's a connection between the WBO and Bob Arum and the WBO and Oscar De La Hoya? Just as clear as it is that there was a connection between the WBC and Don King. But I find it funny then and now, when this article came out in 1999, how names aren't important, but he wouldn't name the name of the promoter that he worked for, but he would throw Don King under the bus. What major promoter was out there paying for judges in New York to go out to championship fights out in France? I would be very interested to see in 1993 whether or not Top Rank had a fight card in Avion, France. Because that sounds like it's exactly what a Bob Arum would have done. Because that's what Bob Arum does with the Boxing Writers Association of America. Like, how do these promoters get into the Hall of Fame before fighters do? When you have boxing writers voting on people who gets into the Hall of Fame, and the promoter gets in there before the fighters do? Come on, man. It is what it is. But it's not just the judges. It's not just the referees. It's the media as well. And you got them leading casual fans to believe that, things are, building boxing bubbles. Like housing bubbles, building boxer bubbles. Hyping up fighters to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? And you making money on the way up. And then they cut their losses and they earn money off those boxers all on the way down too. Look what Bob Arum is doing with Manny Pacquiao. There's nothing I believe more than Bob Arum would love to do more than send Manny Pacquiao out to the glue factory by sticking him in there with Terrence Crawford on a pay-per-view card. Because his life cycle is at an end. And you see him even trashing Manny Pacquiao, his best fighter. When it was Manny Pacquiao, was on his way up. He was the greatest fighter ever to step in the ring, right? And now he's actively trying to sabotage him. So anyway, it is what it is. That's boxing. And, I just wanted to share those thoughts, and I'm out. Peace.